Live from the best basements that money can rent, it's the Joe and Joe Weather Show on the 24th of August, 2020, and it is exactly 7:02-ish Eastern Time.
And here we are.
Yes, here we are. Busy.
I have two questions. Well, actually, I have a singular question, and I'm wondering whether or not I said a few days ago that I consider myself just a GP, a general practitioner, in terms of weather and forecasting or whatever. I'm certainly not, for example, an expert on severe weather. And yet,
nor am I.
I don't know about you, Joe, but every model that I looked at for tomorrow is showing a bare minimum chance of any kind of precipitation, any kind of thunderstorm activity. And yet, not only are we still under a severe threat, a slight threat of severe weather here, but just to the south, they've even put an enhanced risk. And I'm saying, where are they getting all of this from if the models are spitting out hardly anything in terms of moisture and precipitation?
I'm going to tell you something. Think back over the last 3 weeks how badly the short-term models have done with thunderstorms. They've been horrible. They've been just horrible.
Yeah.
We had. Did we not have one surprise? And a surprise just back a few days ago where the models showed next to nothing. So I'm looking at the dynamics. I think that there's going to be some cells around tomorrow.
I have no question. If we use Antoine's rule, Tex Antoine, of course, always said a front is a front. Even when the front is indicated to be a dry front, you always have to worry about any kind of precipitation, accompanying it in. Certainly, we're looking at temperatures tomorrow at around 90 with dew points in the mid and upper 60s. And then on Wednesday, we go into the 70s to near 80 with dew points maybe in the upper 40s and low 50s. So there has to be some kind of reaction for the atmosphere. It's just that, there have been times over, recent history where the GFS or the NAM, all the models, let's say, clearly show a squall line, a prefrontal squall line.
Yeah, the NAM
like that.
The NAM 3,
nothing like that.
Yeah, the NAM 3's got a few cells in there. Joe, think back to last Friday morning where they had a tornado warning in Monmouth County.
Right.
Okay. That whole round of severe weather was not shown by any, not the HRRR, not the NAM, not the global models, nothing, zero, nada. And we've had several episodes before that. There was one particular day, I can't remember the specifics, about 2 weeks ago. I remember reading a post from Craig Allen complaining about how badly the short-term models were because they didn't really show anything, and the radar was loaded beyond belief.
Right.
So I've been kind of staying away from a little bit from the specifics of the short-term models when it comes to this stuff because of just they've been behaving so badly. And again, I think the dynamics are there. It's a pretty decent short wave. You've got, there's a good jet streak at 700 millibars. I noticed. We could take a look at that as we talk about the severe weather. In fact, let's do that first, get it out of the way. Then we could go talk about Marco and Laura and see what that brings. The severe weather risk, by the way, we have a severe weather risk tonight going on. We have a marginal risk of severe weather at the moment running from Northeast Virginia on up into northern New England. The thunderstorms have been scattered. Actually, Joe, the activity has been stronger up in northern New England than it has over us. And, there's some scattered cells to the south, but there's nothing really here to write home about.
Absolutely. In fact, yesterday, during the mid-afternoon yesterday, central and eastern Massachusetts was getting absolutely hammered with strong to severe weather. And there were a couple of big boomers. I saw Tim Veltman, who's in the Albany area, commenting that there was a rather large scale storm that passed on through his vicinity. So they're out there. Certainly they are out there. But, you'd like to see a little bit more out of the short term. And I don't know what they did to the short term models over the last couple of weeks or anything.
Oh, they've been they've been awful. They've been just awful.
You'd like to see something. I hope it's not going to be one of those situations tomorrow where by the end of the day tomorrow, there are going to be people out there saying, I thought we were going to get slammed by big weather, and I didn't see
And
anything.
it
And I,
doesn't happen. Yeah, I know. Well, I've long since just kind of learned to just completely ignore that. There was I just pulled up the Fort Dix radar because there was a storm running east of Allentown along Route 78 on the Jersey side, and it looks like in northern Hunterdon County and into Somerset County. But that looks like it's waning now. And we can go up to look at the Boston radar because there were a few cells up in New England, as I mentioned, and see what's happening there at the moment. And there's a cell, just one cell south of Bennington, Vermont, and the rest of looks like most of Massachusetts and Connecticut are in the clear. And we'll take it up one more radar, go up a little bit further. And yeah, there's a line that runs south of Rutland to Springfield, between Springfield and Lebanon, New Hampshire, and then going into east, a couple of cells just. Is that I can't even read that. Is that Portland? Yeah, that's just west of Portland on that radar shot. So all in all, there's some scattered activity tonight. There have been a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings that were issued for a few spots in the Northeast. But tomorrow is, I think, obviously it's a bigger deal. And I'm just going to bring the wide radar first since I have it up. We'll just go through everything. And you're seeing some of the rain here from Marco, from the Florida Panhandle, in this arc that runs up into central Georgia and into South Carolina. And that's moving northwest. Some cells, some stronger storms on the coastal bend of Florida, and then out to the west in Texas. Not really too much going on. You can see very little in terms of the cells that are running back into Louisiana. Marco just completely fell apart. Seeing showers and thunderstorms rotating anticyclonically in the southwest again. There's this upper high that's out there. And you got cells in Nevada that are moving northeast. You've got cells in Colorado uh, making the turn to turn southeast and south, and then they go southwest in New Mexico and west into Arizona. Uh, I love watching storms rotating anticyclonically around a high, and then there's a few cells that are a few showers up in parts of Idaho and western Oregon. So that's going to take care of the radar, and we're going to bring up the Storm Prediction Center's map. Now, this is the map, obviously, for tonight, and we just showed you that. The Storm Prediction Center for tomorrow, they originally had everybody in slight risk from uh, Northeast Virginia to New England, but there you see it, Joe. They got that enhanced risk, Eastern Maryland, and into most of southeastern Pennsylvania and into southern New Jersey.
well, the southern New Jersey since April has been kind of a hot spot. I mean, they've had one severe weather event after another over the last 3 or 4 months out there. So maybe it's just also because of that they've said, "Hey, let's cover ourselves and place them." I said even yesterday. I said I wouldn't be surprised if they had an enhanced risk, or what we used to refer to as a moderate risk of severe weather down there. By the way, I love the comment about Marco. Tim Veltman was commenting to Chuck Cardillo, and he said Marco found out what it's like to be a high-profile vehicle on a windy day. The shear tipped him over.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
I love that.
Well,
That's perfect.
on that particular note, let's come back to the severe weather later because we have a special guest.
We
And
do.
yes, we do. We have a very, very special guest. And because given the situation with now Tropical Storm Laura, and it looks like that it will go into the northwest Gulf of Mexico, why not talk to somebody who lives in the northwest Gulf of
In the
Mexico?
line of fire, so to speak.
Sort of. So we have with us tonight, and he's been here before, of course, our Addison Green. And Addison worked with Joe and I at FiOS One News, and now he's a megastar. I mean, not even. I mean, megastar doesn't even describe it. You can't come up with a word that I don't know. Just emphasizes enough how huge Addison is at KHOU in Houston, the CBS affiliate. I mean, he's so huge. He got to, he copied me. He grew a goatee.
Okay. In order to be successful, I have to grow the facial hair and be like Joe Chaffee. I can't
Well,
grow the hair like Joe Rayo, so I grow the facial hair.
Okay, well, it's good that your management made that very clear to you. Thanks for joining us tonight, because I know you're going to have your hands full. Depending on the track. So why don't I bring up the satellite? We can talk about what's going on and go from there. First off, well, I got to get it to load. Addison, I'm just kind of curious as we look at Laura moving over the Isle of Youth in the Northwest Caribbean. Had some northeast shear that went on this morning. A little, that mountainous terrain took some toll, though it took a while for that to happen. But now it does seem like it's starting to, it's past all that, and it looks like it's organizing. And I think this is going to get to a Category 3 in the Gulf of Mexico before it makes landfall. That's from what I looked at today. That's where I'm going with this.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there as well. Either a weak Category 3, maybe depending upon the strengthening of it, maybe getting to a high Cat 3. I think it's not out of the realm of impossibility, especially looking at the upper level features going on with the system, despite going over Hispaniola, where most storms just get torn apart. This one survived, and its core was relatively intact, and then making its way across the Cuba area, still relatively intact. You can still see those outer bands coming in nicely. So as it goes into the Gulf, it's just a free-for-all right there, especially with an upper level ridge aloft. If it wasn't for the forward motion of roughly 20 miles per hour, I'd be very, very concerned about dealing with a monster hurricane in our hands a couple of days from now. But thankfully, moving at 20 miles per hour or so, it's not going to have that chance to really blow up like it normally would in such a favorable environment.
But it is crossing the Gulf the long way, so it is covering. If it's going to cross the Gulf, and it crosses it on a diagonal, that's the part of the triangle that's got the longest length, the hypotenuse.
Yes.
Not related to Uncle Tanuse, but no matter.
No. That's too. He wouldn't understand Uncle Tanuse.
No, I know he would.
I've heard of Uncle Tanuse.
Now, I don't know. I wanted to draw on the map, but for some reason my map tool is not working correctly. I'm going to try to bring it up in a different way. So in the meantime, hang on, because I really want to. This is where the tool of being able to draw on the map is useful. Okay, now it seems to have decided to finally load for me. I'm being punished as I was watching an interview on CNBC where the person they were interviewing, all you kept hearing was that sound you just heard, that the computer sound from Windows. And it was so annoying. It just would not stop. Okay, my pen just came out. Okay, let's see if this works. So
slowly we're getting there. Slowly.
All right. So here is Laura, okay, and now here's Marco. And if everybody looks really carefully, you can see the completely exposed circulation center. And this is what happens when you have the wind shear issues, because all the thunderstorms get blown away. And if you look at the clouds, guys, notice the high cloud, the middle and high clouds in East Texas, how they're going southwest to northeast. That's that deep upper trough that was pretty much sitting in the western Gulf of Mexico. And Marco, we if it went too far west, it was going to get into that shear zone, and that's exactly what happened last night. It started weakening, and then it just completely fell apart.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it was barely a Cat 1 hurricane when it got that designation. I'm like, really? This is a hurricane? It's like that close of being not a hurricane. But yeah, as it's running to an unfavorable environment, you can see that trough digging down and those upper level winds just tearing it apart. especially looking at the visible satellite imagery. I mean, like that is just so lopsided. It's not even funny. Like that's a hurricane. I mean, that's a tropical storm. Wow.
Right. And by the way, Joe Rayo, you're gonna love what I'm gonna say right now,
Okay.
and that is, um, it's amazing how the networks ran. I mean, just absolutely ran with the idea of two major hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico at the same time. In
Right.
fact, even as of late this afternoon and this evening, I was watching several networks who just they went to a live shot to someone in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and still acting as if there were going to be two storms in there at the same time until he was about 45 seconds into his live shot, and then he admitted that Marco went inland. Marco had weakened considerably, and I mean, as it really turns out, Laura, we never really had them both in the Gulf of Mexico at the same time. That
No.
first
Oh,
off. So between that and the the climate change screamers about how this is all about climate change, uh, you know, you got to kind of wait for stuff to happen before you claim that it has happened. I guess that's the best way to put it.
well, they had last week, Joe. I think last Thursday and Friday, the long range forecasts were for both storms to be of equal strength and moving almost in tandem, making landfall at the same time. I think it was on
Right.
Wednesday.
Right.
Well,
One of them in the Northwest Gulf, the other one along the Florida West Coast.
Yeah.
But
And
my gripe is the fact that it started to become pretty clear on late Saturday that or even before that, but it was starting to become clear on Saturday that this was not going to be two storms hitting two on the same time, that they would be maybe a day apart. Then Sunday it turned out it looked like it's going to be 2 days apart. But they continue to just kind of carry that theme of the major double hurricane hit for the Gulf of Mexico right up until about 2 hours ago.
yeah. Like it's not gonna happen. Stop trying to make it happen. I mean, yes, it is quite unique to have the two cones both going into the Gulf relatively at the same time. They're like, we can't quite say we've seen this before, and then everyone started pulling out stats of like the last time this happened, X, Y, and Z parameters. But I'm like, this is why you haven't had since records began in 1849 two hurricanes in the Gulf at the same time. Conditions are just not conducive. You got to have the planetary alignment for this to pretty much happen. And here we go. Marco made landfall about 15 minutes ago. And it's going to fade away to nothing soon. And that's just as we get Laura getting into the Gulf, because right now it's just sitting just south of Cuba.
and I agree with you about the strength of the storm, talking about Laura, Addison, because and I brought this up on Joe and Joe yesterday on a Sunday morning show, that it's the same time of the year where literally it's right at this time of the year almost that Katrina hit in 2005, making an eye toward the Louisiana coastline. And I remember the night before, I was on a Saturday night, how it was a Category 3 storm, and then literally within 9 hours, that went from a 3 to a 5. And I woke up that next morning and said I couldn't believe how rapidly the intensification occurred just off of the Louisiana coastline. And in my eye, there's absolutely no reason not to believe that that couldn't happen again. I mean, we play it conservative with the computer guidance and trying. I know the worst part about hurricane forecast is trying to nail down the intensity. That's the one thing that the forecasters always have a big problem with. But it wouldn't surprise me any if, let's say, late Wednesday or Wednesday night or early Thursday, that this thing suddenly jumped in terms of intensification, because it happened before, and it's why not? Why couldn't it happen again?
All right, so hold on one second, because the tropic, we had a major
Absolutely,
no. I was going to say, just say that the Tropical Tidbits website apparently has crashed. Okay, so we're going to have to. I'm going to maneuver here. First off, with respect to Marco, let's just get this done. It's weakening into a tropical depression. It's going goodbye. A remnant low that's going to move through southern Louisiana. As of 4 p.m., it was at 29 north, 88.9 west, top winds 40 miles an hour, barely a tropical storm. I don't know why they didn't downgrade it, but I guess they're still seeing some winds at about 35 or 40 miles an hour. So that's done. And I do have the new forecast, the new plots from the Hurricane Center. Now you're under a hurricane watch where you are. You're in Houston, correct?
Yes.
So
Yes.
it goes to Galveston Bay, as I think is the western edge of it, or just
Yeah.
west of
So
it, just to the
that's just
west of
south of
Galveston Bay.
yeah, just southeast of the actual Houston city itself. Um, Harris County that Houston is in is underneath tropical storm watch, if I'm not mistaken, and that extends like maybe 4 or 5 counties northward. But that hurricane watch goes until I think tomorrow at 4 o'clock. So they are looking at the chance of maybe extending that further out, south and west of the Galveston area, and also potentially upgrading it to a hurricane warning as we get Laura approaching. So while we are on the left side of the system, the quote unquote cleaner side, we can still get a fair amount of wind and rain from this system, just minus the storm surge.
What you
Thank
have
goodness.
what you have to concern yourself about, in my opinion, uh, is the fact that this was supposed to move through the Florida Straits, and it's on the south side of Cuba,
Hmm.
you're still going west northwest. At some point, it's going to turn northwest while it's in the Gulf of Mexico, and I get that. But the longer it takes, the longer that we see this sort of southern correction, the greater the risk is going to be, not only from the standpoint of the north, the northern part of the coastal bend of Texas, but also the fact that puts that that's going to wind up giving it an extra 6 hours or 8 hours or so over the open waters. And as
Yeah.
Joe argued, I mean, and I think Joe, you do have you have a solid point. I mean, I don't know if I'd jump all the way to go to a category, a category 4 or a category 5. I certainly think that this is going to be this is going to get to a 3. Whether whether as you point out, Addison, if moving 20 miles an hour all the way across is going to keep it from getting to to something stronger. I would just point out that Camille was moving at 20 miles an hour from the top of the Yucatan Channel into Biloxi, Mississippi. I mean, it just kind of accelerated like a rocket ship, and it didn't stop that from going from a tropical storm to a Category 5 hurricane in about 24 hours time. So,
That's true.
if the
That's a good point.
conditions are there, it's going to blow.
Katrina, by the way, unlike what we're seeing
Hmm.
with Laura, as you said, Joe, going straight across on that diagonal, Katrina was more of a north northwest mover. So I mean, it was like down near South Florida and then kind of looped up on a north northwest trajectory. So it didn't take that long path that Laura is taking. And yeah, you're right. That's a good point about Camille. I mean, sometimes and Camille again in August. I mean, this is the prime time in the Gulf of Mexico. That water's like bathtub water, and the fuel for hurricanes, and the hurricanes love this. So I would be very very surprised if in the next 24 hours we didn't see any rapid intensification from Laura. Laura's kind of like been held at bay for a while, in part due to the interaction with Hispaniola. But in the hours to come, you're going to see that thing start winding up and getting ready. And also, as you pointed out yesterday, Joe, whereas Marco encountered that strong southwesterly wind shear, that ain't going to be the case with Laura. Laura is going to be coming in home and free without having to be impeded by those
Hmm.
southwesterly winds.
No, and I got tropicaltidbits.com back up. Thanks, Levi. We
He heard you.
we
He heard
have
you loud and clear.
this is from this afternoon. The deep trough and we're looking way up in the atmosphere, folks, way up at about 30,000 feet. So there's this deep trough. You've got all these strong southwest winds in the western Gulf of Mexico. Here's the circulation that represents um, uh, Marco, just driving right into that shear. And Laura is sitting here back south of Cuba, so it was dealing with its own issues with regards to the landmass of Cuba and so on. And yes, yesterday when it was over the Dominican Republic. But watch what happens with this trough that's out in Texas as we go forward in time. it actually retrogrades westward. The whole trough just kind of moves into New Mexico, and that opens the door for a very, very favorable environment. This thing's got the upper high sitting right over the center of the hurricane, all the way through. And the GFS by tomorrow evening at this time has the pressure down to a 9. This is the new one. Has it down to a 972. And by Wednesday morning, a 956.
That's crazy.
And, it kind of keeps it in the low 950s. It still wants to bring it in near Lake Charles as opposed to bringing it into the Texas coast, because by that time, there's the trough, an upper trough is going to be swinging to the east a bit, and it tries to make the turn. But again, I go back to what I said before. If you're starting out a little bit further south from Cuba, you better hope that it makes that turn. Otherwise, you're going to end up seeing it like the European has it, which is the Europeans on the most southwest side. And Joe, for you, I don't know if you saw this, or Addison, I don't know if you saw this, but you were mentioning about this doing a Katrina in terms of strength, and I have no. Let me emphasize this. I put no value in the NAM 3. Friends should never let friends use the NAM to forecast hurricanes. But I would just point out, Mr. Rayo, that on the NAM 3 this afternoon, that is a 908 pressure. Okay.
Ouch.
But it's further east. It brings it along the central Louisiana coast. Now that is actually higher. Okay, that's higher than and I've got the map up. That is higher than what is that? That was an 888 pressure or an 885. That was an 885 pressure coming into southeast Louisiana on the 12Z run. I don't know what it is about this model. I guess the NAM 3 is the new Canadian when it comes to spinning everything up into a category 5.
885 millibars, just for all of you who are interested and or looking on it on your aneroid barometer. Good luck. 885 millibar corresponds to 26.13 inches of mercury. Good luck.
Yeah. And by the way, I think Katrina got down to 8. It definitely got it below 900. I'm trying to remember if that was the one that got down close to 880.
I think it was 888.
888.
I think pretty sure it's 888.
888. Well, look, again, folks, I just want to emphasize, I don't use the NAM model, and I don't really use the NAM 3-kilometer model when it comes to tropical storm or hurricane forecasting. I just had to put it up there because it was there, and everybody gets a kick out of the fact that some of these models do the things that they do. But I would stress that this thing certainly does have time to become, and has the upper air conditions to become the season's first major hurricane.
And several people on the chat board are pointing out, Marco Zucconi and Johnny Quest, that Katrina was a Cat 3 at landfall, and that you're absolutely it's absolutely true at that.
Yes.
However, what I'm referring to is when it was out over the Gulf of Mexico on that Saturday night into early Sunday morning, when the thing just jumped from a 3 to a 5 within 9 hours, and as it approached the coastline, it did lose a little bit. There was also, I believe, a replacement eye wall cycle that was taking place just before the landfall, and that'll take a bit out of the strength of a storm too.
That's why you got to it has to be synchronized perfectly, that in terms of when you have a really, really intense hurricane and they go through these replacement cycles where the pressure bounces up. Sometimes it can bounce up 20 or 30 millibars or even more, and then it levels off, and then it'll deepen again. Meanwhile, I just wanted for equal time, the regular standard NAM, the 12-kilometer NAM, has it as a 969 or a 968 going into southwestern corner of Louisiana. So what are you, Addison? What are you guys thinking? And gals, what are the guys and gals thinking at KHOU with regards to where this is going to wind up?
We were just talking about this, me and my chief earlier today. And just based on how the tracks have been so far, wouldn't be surprised if we see this shift a little bit further to the west. There was that initial lineup of having the updates, having the track going towards like Houston, and then backed up and went towards central Louisiana. Wouldn't be surprised if we see it inch a little bit closer and closer to the west, maybe going right over Houston. That's at least what the NHC was also referring to as well when they said that we may have to think about expanding hurricane watches down the Texas coastline by several counties. We'll see as things go through. But in terms of intensification, with regards to Laura going over in the open waters, there is definitely all the ample possibilities of this thing really blowing up. Cat 3, I think, is definitely possible. Cat 4, sure, that is definitely not out of reach. I don't think we're talking Cat 5s here, anybody, but I definitely know a lot of people would be a little more concerned if it was at a much slower pace. If we had this thing crawling across the Gulf at like 5 to 8 miles per hour, I mean, it would just have just so much ample fuel to work off and all the time in the world. As it's making that forward motion, they're now more concerned with the potential storm surge, at least with regards to Louisiana. They just had some press conferences earlier today in Houston and in Galveston expressing the concerns for the potential of evacuations, storm surge, and whatnot. Right now, they're just readying all the vehicles that they need and supplies that they need. But everyone's trying to talk about the potential for, like, voluntary or mandatory evacuations, and how do you go about that during a pandemic? And people are like, I don't know.
Well, that's a good question. That was something that we've asked ourselves a few times along the way. What's going to happen when they have to do some sort of mandatory evacuation for a major hurricane? How do you do that? Particularly now, correct me if I'm wrong. In the rare instance that I am, just don't hold back, Addison. But
very rare.
How is the whole wearing mask thing going? And I know that's I'm kind of I'm not trying to change the subject. I'm actually trying to link the two together.
Sure.
Because we see stories up here. Having been up here, we see stories that are slanted in a certain way with regards to some of the news information that's delivered. So we have probably more of a likelihood of seeing a story about someone who refuses to wear a mask without the footnote that should be said, which is that, well, the vast majority of people are wearing masks. And I'm asking that because if you have to put everybody inside a gymnasium in a high school in a shelter, how do you do that? I mean, are people fighting over whether they should wear masks or not wear masks, or is everybody kind of behaving themselves that way?
I think right now, with regards to like evacuations and having to put up shelters, there have been easy, pleasant talks about, like, how we would distribute PPE and masks and whatnot. I have not heard much of any, blowback from, like, having to wear a mask and trying to be evacuated and whatnot. I think they're just more or less taking this on a case by case basis. And if we need to pull the lever and start to do these evacuations, we'll get that into people's mindsets. But we were already talking back on Friday's time frame that, like, hey, we're keeping our eyes in the Gulf. We're starting to see systems ramp on up. Boom, here come the tracks putting these systems in the Gulf. You guys need to make sure you have your hurricane preparedness kit with you, but now also have at least 2 masks per person in your kit, because if you get someplace that you have to be evacuated with and you have to be within reach of people, you don't want to put yourself at risk potentially, right, and vice versa. So everyone's having to now put that into their mentality of how to handle the situation. I was out at the supermarket over the weekend trying to stock up on my own supplies and necessities, and there was a big,
like hair gel
mask. Of course,
like hair gel.
Squeaky clean. I think I'm using the wrong one. I think it's taking the hair away.
I remember, Addison, during Katrina in New Orleans, they actually put people or told people to go to the Superdome who were being evacuated. Now, my question to you, of course, the Astros no longer play at the Astrodome, but I'm assuming that that building is still there. Is it used for anything? Might they use that in case they needed to have a major evacuation? Or
I
what?
thought they took the Astrodome down.
No,
They think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not 100% certain. I know they did move on from the Astrodome. I'm not sure if it's still there or not. But the new stadium now, the Astros play in Minute Maid Park, has a retractable roof, so that could be used as a shelter, and that's just a block away from the major convention center in downtown Houston. That could also potentially be used if such a need arise. But they also have several facilities, roofed up, shielded facilities where the Houston Texans play over that way. So they have multiple spots that can go to. Some of them right now either still are or were being used as makeshift COVID hospitals slash testing centers. So they still have those facilities within reach to be needed. So it's definitely a possibility that they could be used again. Not sure in this instance, but maybe throughout the entire tropical season. We'll see.
And Addison, what about? I mean, what are your I mean, how do you feel? I mean, are you stressed out? Do you feel safe wherever you happen to be living? Are you hoping that no damage occurs in your immediate vicinity or whatever like that? Because a lot of people they look at us over the years. I know, Joe, you probably said the same thing. You get these remarks from other people. They say to you
Right.
that, yeah,
They're trolls.
I guess you're happy
Trolls.
you're going to get a big storm now, aren't you? Or you're happy that's it. And admittedly, when I was very young and just getting started, stuff like this really got me excited. But over the years,
You get old. You want to go to bed. You want to go
no,
into your own bed.
you get stressed. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you worry about
Agreed.
your wife, you worry about your kids, you worry about your property. So yeah, I'm in. Toward the end of my career, I was in with everybody else. I wasn't rooting and jumping up and down. So I'm just wondering if with Addison, do you feel safe, or are you hunkered down, or you're gonna what's your feelings in all of this?
I feel pretty safe. I feel no big anxiety building on up. Maybe partially because I'm seeing this information firsthand, as opposed to being a passerby and just getting it, secondhand information. But I feel personally safe and secure. I don't feel that there's any imminent threat in the Houston metro area itself right now for the time being. And in my own facilities, my apartment complex, I'm located on the western side of town, so away from any areas that got impacted significantly by Harvey. And that was one of the things I was looking at when I was looking at housing. It was like, where did Harvey hit? Where the areas that got mostly impacted? Okay, I want to go away from there, and then I'm at least one story above ground level, so I feel fine. I mean, if anything big like that comes along, be a different story. But no, I feel okay, feel safe,
Right.
and even during this whole pandemic, same thing as well.
The intensity guidance. By the way, the late afternoon intensity guidance. Every run seems to get a little more robust, and you do have a number of most of the models. Over half the models have it at least as a Cat 2, and you've got 3 of them that have it as a Cat 3, and 2 of those 3 touch the Cat 4 briefly before it makes landfall, and then of course it weakens. And in terms of
Hmm.
the le plat de spaghetti, or the spaghetti plots, the it's funny because this has been almost on every run. There's one outlier that's south and west, and on the latest run, you have virtually all of them bringing it over Lake Charles. But there's that one model. I don't know which one it is, but there's the one model, Addison, that brings it right into Galveston Bay, and whatever hurricane model that is. Would match what the European did, which was basically take it a little more west and south of the other one. So I certainly, my usual, when I look at these spaghetti plots, I usually tend to take the one that's furthest west and the one that's furthest east and just kind of throw them both out. And I try to look to see where where they're all tightly clustered. But given the fact that this storm has had a history of winding up, again, instead of running up the North Shore through the Florida Straits or along the northern coast of Cuba and the Dominican Republic, it wound up about 100 miles further to the south. So I want to be a little careful. I'm not going to discount any land area as far as the landfall. I think the Hurricane Center is wise to have a fairly large watch area there in the Northwest Gulf.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and the fact that they have extended the tropical storm watches a good distance further inland, just anticipating how big the wind field is, or at least how strong those core tropical storm force winds could be as the system moves inland. But as we see in the forecast cone, for instance, once it makes landfall early Thursday morning, that thing by 12 hours later will be pushing into Shreveport and just maybe dropping down its intensity rapidly in some spots. So we could definitely deal with a weakening system very quickly.
By the way, I just put up the GFS ensembles, and the track on the mean track on the GFS ensemble is actually to the left of the operational. It's on the Texas side of the Louisiana border, for what it's worth.
Oh,
and by the way, folks at home, if you're watching, you'll notice if you look at these maps and you see these things online, in the upper left, in the upper right corner, it says, "Do not use this map to make decisions. Seek official information." And I think that this is a good place to say that with regard, if you're watching, we have folks that watch from all over, especially when tropical storms and hurricanes are running around. So if you have decisions to make with regards to what to do in the event that there's a hurricane warning, be sure to follow the advice of your local officials. The National Weather Service, you can find that online by going to weather.gov, or the National Hurricane Center to get information, and that's nhc.noaa.gov. Don't ask Joe and I, because we're not going to tell you what to do. Okay.
But I will tell you this. I will say that somebody on the chat board, and this goes back, I can't believe it, we've already been talking for 41 minutes here, but somebody was talking about the track of Laura, and noticing that, hey, it's passing well to our south. Maybe we'll miss out on its effects. Not very likely, because again, in tropical systems, a lot of this moisture gets wrung out like a giant sponge. So we're going to see some of that moisture from Laura. Also on Saturday, when the storm is passing closest to us, we have another weather system to watch. That's another cold front that will be moving down from the north and west. So between the front to the north and west and Laura passing to our south, all of that moisture in between, there's no way that we're going to miss out on, unfortunately, from this vantage point right now, a pretty rainy day on Saturday.
Right.
Hopefully the front will act like a giant whisk broom and push all of this stuff out to salvage the second end of the weekend on Sunday.
Right, but let's be clear also that what we saw with Isaias was a special situation with the deep trough to the west, that it shot up the East Coast and not only maintained its strength, but was actually able to strengthen. This is a different situation for something that far west. It's probably the circulation itself is probably going to wind up getting absorbed by the frontal system, but the moisture will remain. Now, how much of that heavy rain gets up here, or does it move through the mid-Atlantic states? That remains to be seen. But I just want to make it clear that this is not going to be a repeat of the 70 to 80 mile an hour winds that we got from Isaias, because this is totally different. Okay, totally different in terms of its approach.
No, but you know what, Joe, and you and I worked in this market for a long time, probably much longer than we should have. But you just know that whatever happens down in the Gulf on Wednesday or Thursday, they're going to be showing clips from that on Thursday night on the 11 o'clock news on virtually every outlet here.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to show you that, and they're going to say, Hurricane Laura.
There'll be more power outages in our future, because that's a touchy subject. That's a very touchy subject, and they're going to go down that angle.
Right.
This is not a wind. This is not a wind thing. This is just rain getting absorbed but they're going to put it in there.
They're going to plant that in your mind, because they know that if they plant that in your mind after the third commercial leading into the news, you're going to be sticking by your TV set to see whether or not that's going to be the story for us. Believe me, folks, it is not going to be the story for us. Rain, yes. 70-mile-per-hour winds, or a repeat of what's going on down over the Gulf states in the coming days? No.
Yeah, you made me feel like a Ralph Cramden moment here, Joe. That you know that I know that you know that I know how easy you get virus.
But you and I both will be yelling out the window like Ralph on Thursday night. Whoa, it certainly looks like rain tonight.
Yes, exactly. So,
I missed that show.
Addison, do you have anything to do? other than being a big movie star? Do you have anything to do? I'm just in case you have to leave to do, your laundry or dust, whatever.
Well, I washed all my polyester blends before I got
A
on the Zoom
wise
call,
choice
so
on your part. I'll have to
didn't want
ask.
them hanging
I'll
around.
have to ask the Lord to forgive you for your sins of wearing mixed fabrics. But go on.
How dare I? No, honestly, with the whole pandemic going on, we had a couple of scares in the station. So for the most part, I just try and take it easy, keep myself busy in my apartment, complex, and found myself whenever it's not like feeling like 100 degrees outside, which is rare in the summertime. I'm like out biking, going along the bayous, the various rivers and tributaries. So it was a good excuse to get out and about and trying to explore the city whenever I can. So no, not keeping me from anything. In fact, I'm just doing social media monitoring right now this evening, and then just all hands on deck for tomorrow and Wednesday, where I'm sure Wednesday will be
My,
staggered throughout the day into the overnight hours.
I'm sure, Addison, I'm sure that you and your cohorts, your meteorological cohorts at KHOU, you're going to be either tomorrow or especially on Wednesday, they're going to gather all of you together and they're going to say, the KHOU Weather Center is on the march and we're watching it for you, that kind of stuff, right?
Of course.
It's standard for
Michael
doing that
Reese,
stuff.
Michael Reese on the chat board brings up
It.
an interesting point. We were just talking about, we were talking earlier about the NAM3, the NAM 3 kilometer model with the 888 pressure. And he says, much of the model inaccuracy isn't the models, it's the data. Well, we need something like a swarm of drones sitting around the storm at various levels to get enough of it. Yeah, I get. Well, yes, but I would just say, at least from the standpoint of what the NAM 3 kilometer, the model that it is, because it's such a small scale model, it's good for this. Its grid spacing is very, very small, and I think that's probably the reason why it's doing what it's doing in terms of showing that deep pressure. I don't know that a hurricane. I don't think you want to use something that's got such a tight grid with
No.
a hurricane. I think you probably would want to go with one of the global models. I'm guessing.
I'm with you there.
Yes.
Yeah, because too much. This might be an instance where too much data is not a good thing.
Too noisy.
Yes, exactly.
Although,
too noisy. It's going to react to every thunderstorm that's in there.
In fact, our old friend Joe, the LFM 2.LFM, was often considered to be too noisy, and sometimes, as you well remember, it used to come up with some crazy stuff, especially over the.
But for something like this, if it was like a Category 3 or 4 hurricane, all you would see on the map is an L.
That's
And,
right.
and a little kink in the isobar. You wouldn't even see.
That's it.
You wouldn't even see a closed isobar. Really, it never. They're not. The models that we used were so primitive initially. You certainly could never. You really couldn't use them for tropical development. They didn't show anything.
Right.
So you
Well, I'm
basically.
curious what your thoughts were back in, correct me if I'm wrong, 1992. So 28 years from here.
Yeah.
Hurricane Andrew coming on into Florida. And I saw some people on Twitter posting videos or posts like, what were you doing back then when this was happening? I'm like, wow, that was 28 years ago. And just looking at the satellite loop, I'm like, it just looks so dated compared to how we have things now. So I can only imagine how you guys feel, seeing the models from back then compared to how the model data is now and how much things have changed.
Well, I would just tell you that at least from the standpoint of when Andrew that I recall, there were you kind of had a feeling that Andrew in its formative stages was going to be a Category 4 or a Category 5. It just that you're asking me to think back 28 years.
Yeah.
But I think we had to use our instincts. I think we have to use our instinct. We used our instincts a lot more back in the day because we had to. And I think it made people better forecasters to an extent. Joe, you might disagree with me.
Yeah.
There are times when you just want to throw your hands up in the air because there's too much to look at. And so, yeah, I mean, we had to do it a little bit more off the seat of our pants. And quite frankly, I kind of liked it that way.
When you saw, I know when we looked at the 72 or the 84-hour progs, and we only had to work off of the 500 millibar level at that time. But if we saw any kind of reflection of a potential tropical system on those maps, especially if you have like, two or three height lines indicating the tropical system, you knew that was going to be something loaded for bear. And but we're talking about Andrew, we're talking about Gilbert. There was another storm. How about Hugo? I mean, these were storms that are in the Hall of Fame, so to speak. And yeah, we knew just by looking at those primitive models from way back when. Uh, and this again is empiricism. This is from working with this stuff for a very long time. Joe, you and I, by the early '90s, we'd already been doing this now for like 14 years. So I mean,
Yeah.
it was empiricism and knowledge, and even with those models, we were able to tell and know. I mean, I remember telling somebody just a few days before. In fact, I know who the somebody was. For my goodness sake, my grandfather. My grandfather lived in Hialeah back then, and I was telling him, I said,
Do you live near the racetrack?
near the racetrack, believe it or not. He was, and he, I told him, I said, Grandpa, I said, this is going to be like a buzz saw cutting through the middle part of Florida. I mean, my God,
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be horrible, and it was.
Yeah, I remember that.
By the
I
way,
remember watching on the Weather Channel look like that.
um, just something just popped into my head, and it is a reminder of something. I think I'm just going to. This is my cause. And I want to eliminate. I want to remove from the face of the earth the uh, the tendency for people to go forecast shopping. I really, this is a situation, something like this,
Yeah.
where people are going to forecast shop, and I have to tell you, I personally can't stand it. On a couple of levels. I don't know about you, Addison, but you're working these days, especially for TV people. You're you're not only doing TV, but you're doing social media. You're doing something else on some websites. You're doing this, that, and the other thing. Somehow you squeeze in a chance to go to the bathroom in there. Maybe you get a chance to get
Maybe.
something to eat. But I just don't have. I don't do it now. I haven't done it for many years. But to sit there and watch what other people are doing, it just doesn't even cross my mind, and hasn't for
No.
well over a decade. So when someone comes up to me or to you, or I don't know how you handle it, but when someone comes up to me and asks me my opinion, and then follows up with telling me what somebody else said, I go ballistic. I mean, it just drives. I mean, I try to hold my temper, but there's a part of me that just wants to lose it because A,
Yeah.
I don't watch, B, I don't care. Okay, and C,
Yes.
why are you telling me this?
Gentlemen,
Yes.
before
I
Joe,
agree.
you lose your
I
temper
agree.
altogether, I need to tell you that I have to attend to something upstairs, so I'm going to have to make an early departure. But I'm sure the
Okay,
two of you can continue this for a little while. And Joe, I'll see you tomorrow night.
okay, we'll see you tomorrow, Joe.
Okay.
And
Leave
I
us.
will be
Go ahead, leave
available
us.
tomorrow
You
night as
didn't.
well.
You never cared about us. All you ever wanted was supper on the
Of course, I
table.
care about you.
All you ever wanted was supper on the table and no responsibility. Oh, he's gone now. He,
He put up his
he
butts.
closed the
He's out.
curtain. All
Radio
right,
gone.
so
Um,
tell everybody. Oh, now we went to like the double boxes side by side.
Look
That's
at
so
that,
cool.
fancy.
So,
So I want to follow up with what you asked and what you mentioned about the other forecast shopping and whatnot, because sometimes people will bring it up, from time to time. Like I've been doing social media, like Facebook Lives and whatnot, and I have to go back and look in the chat room to see if anybody asks any questions I can answer. And I try and just do the best I can. But then someone says, "Well, what about this model saying this?" and so said that. I'm like, I'm here representing KHOU. This is what I did. This is what I looked. That's it. I'm not trying to be like, oh, well, what did so and so did, and look at what that. No, we're all in this business to inform the public, keep the public safe and sound,
do
and
you
provide the most accurate forecasts we
right?
can. And that's where I stop. Anybody that wants to say and compares anybody to anybody else, I'm like, that's fine. Don't get me involved.
Well, at the point when the thing is, at the point where you have watches going up, is usually at the point where everybody's pretty much on the same page. It's hard to imagine you're going to. I mean, there might be some variation, and obviously, right now we're still trying to kind of resolve. Okay, where is this going to make landfall? Is the furthest left still on the table? I think it is. If
Yeah.
the furthest right is probably not, but the furthest left I think is still probably on the table, and we might not know
Absolutely.
till tomorrow. So you have to expect a little bit of fluidity over it. But it's got to be confusing for someone if they're going to forecast sample 5 or 6 or 7 different people and come up with 5 or 6 or 7 different answers to the same question. It makes it really problematic when it comes to you having to make whatever decisions you have to make as far as your house, as far as what you're going to do, your family, what your family's going to do. So I guess my point in all of this is try not to, folks at home, try not to do that, okay? If
Yeah.
only to keep yourself from getting confused, to just sort of, and there's always the tendency, I've said this many times, people hear what they want to hear. They already know
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
they ask you a question that they already know the answer to, okay?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh,
They
no, you're
already know
absolutely
the
right.
answer to. So basically, the honest person would come up and say, "I'm going to give you a test. I know what the answer is. Here is the question. You have to give me the exact answer." Okay.
What is this, Jeopardy?
Well, yeah, and it should not be in the form of a question. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's very, very frustrating. I've had people
It is.
ask me, you get asked an opinion about something, you give it, but they've already decided to do whatever it is they're going to do anyhow. So
Yep.
if your answer doesn't match what they're going to do, um, it doesn't matter.
No,
It, it,
it absolutely doesn't.
it doesn't matter. I would tell you a story that just happened very recently, but the person might be watching the program, so
Oh,
I don't
all right.
want I don't want to
Side
lose them as
conversation.
an audience. All right, so
No.
what's your TV schedule like? Maybe there are some Houston people that were watching. When Harvey was going on, I had a lot of people that were watching from along the coastal bend of Texas all the way up to Houston and beyond. So we will have some people from that area and in Southwest Louisiana, and we welcome everybody to the program. From that respect, that you were at KHOU, tell everybody
Mm-hmm.
when you are on and what you'll be doing over the next couple of days, so they can watch the
Sure.
movie star that you are.
Yes. Everybody watch. Come watch. I am on Channel 11 here in the Houston metro area, KHOU, and my schedule typically is weekend mornings. We have a morning show on Saturday, 8 to 9:30, and on Sunday it's 7 to 8. Those are my two definite time slots that I'm on. And then during the week, it can be kind of fluid based on the schedule at hand, if we're filling in for different people or rotating spots and whatnot. But typically, I am Monday through Wednesday, working the noon and the 4 o'clock show. And then I'm off Thursday and Friday. So I have been bouncing up and down, left and right, all over the place for various different shifts having to be covered. So definitely have to just keep tuning in and watching. But definitely Saturday and Sunday morning, I am on. And as we go forward through these next 48 to 60 hours, probably we'll have much more extensive coverage of everything going on. I mean, this isn't the Harvey, so we're not seeing like wall to wall, going bonanza coverage. But
Right.
as long as something is coming this way, we'll be on top of it, either on air or we go and do our social media updates, especially Facebook Live when the National Hurricane Center issues their updates. So every 3 hours, one of us is usually on.
By the way, resident statistician Anthony Orr pointing out that the Hurricane Center's new advisory is
Yes.
up, and while I put that up, I'm going to ask you what one of our regulars, Robert Brown, wants to know, and that is whether have they started any kind of evacuations yet in your part of Texas.
They have. Hey, Anthony. Hey, Robert. Thanks for watching, guys. They have talked about volunteering voluntarily evacuations for some of the coastal communities. Last I heard, this would be down towards Galveston County, where obviously Galveston is located, Chambers County, where Bolivar Peninsula is. So it's on the other side of the Houston Bay area. Talking about potential evacuations for over there, but nothing is mandatory, and nothing is being enforced, or carried out right now. It's more or less like, hey, heads up, then we may have to ask you to leave if need be, but no one's walking around being like, all right, time to go. Right now, they are just talking about everyone getting prepared. They had a press conference with the Houston mayor and then the Galveston mayor earlier on today. I'm sure there will be another one tomorrow during the morning hours, perhaps, to give the latest information. We'll see what the latest forecast track is. And I see Anthony saying 65 miles per hour. So I think
Yes.
that
Laura's at 22.1 north, 82.8 west, moving west-northwest at 20 miles per hour or 18 knots. 996, or is it 998? 990. I got to get new glasses. 998 millibars, top wind 65 miles an hour. There's also a NOAA aircraft there right now, and I'm going to bring up some of the obs in just a second. I just want to give Marco, which just made landfall near the mouth of the Mississippi River, 29 north, 89.2 west, moving west-northwest at 8. Top winds at 40, so likely to be downgraded to a tropical depression, probably on the next advisory. And let's take a look. I've got the plane is now investigating Laura, so we're getting some of the first obs. And when you go to aircraft recon on tropical tidbits, this chart that Levi Cowan has up there, it really is very, very useful and easy to read, and gets updated fairly quickly. The one on the upper left is mean sea level pressure and flight level wind. So the red is the mean sea level pressure, and you can see the two drops there, the double bottom drops there from the recon at 995. So the pressure, this was at 2229 Z, so this was at 6:30 Eastern time. And at that, the blue is the wind, and there's a flight level wind that was over 50 knots. And on the upper on the upper right, that's on the upper left. On the upper right, you get the 10-meter wind speed, which is pretty useful. And you've got two peaks here over 55 knots on the wind in the darker blue, and the purple is the rain rate. So it's very interesting because you can look. Sometimes you'll see the peak wind and the heavy rains are going to line up together at times. And here's an instance of where there was a squall, obviously, because you see that purple line go all the way up, as well as the wind. So Laura certainly does seem to have maintained itself quite well, and the pressure has definitely fallen from what it was earlier today. He's also got the plane plot. I always like to look at the plane plot and look at the flight level winds. And 50 to 55 knots is the brownish wind barbs, and you see them there as over Cuba. Yeah, that's one thing that's changed now. I forgot how. I think it was sometime back during the Obama administration that they opened up, allowing. Because for years you couldn't see any radars. You got no recon reports at all because they weren't allowed to fly in the Cuban airspace. But I think it was back during the Obama administration that they agreed to be able to exchange weather information, which is incredibly useful. But this is what the strongest winds are all pretty much north of Cuba at the moment, because this thing does not have a well-defined core yet. But it'll probably get that once it gets into the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, I was seeing videos out there in Key West. I liked it earlier. Sustained winds out of the southeast of 32, gusting to 47, with Laura 215 miles south of Key West, and it looks like an intense thunderstorm going over an area or a weak tropical system, but just like bands of rain, palm trees swing everywhere. And that's what you're seeing 200 plus miles out. It's going to be, quite interesting to see once this thing gets stronger, gets more organized, and really blows up in the Gulf. You'll see that next 24 hours, I'm sure.
Okay. That's it, I guess.
Question for you, Joe.
Yes.
While I got you here, Me and Brittany were talking about this earlier, and someone
Brittany
else asked
Borer.
me this. Miss Brittany Borer, fellow
God
meteorologist,
bless her
also
heart.
from
Hi,
the Pilot's Fun
Brittany.
days. She was asking about, like, how much the track had shifted with Marco over the time from initiation from NHC to over the past several days, and we're seeing also that same marginal to pretty decent shift with Laura, and how much the pandemic and the lack of available airplane data, cruise ship data that we are lacking this year, this tropical season, how, is that impacting these forecasts and how they are not too consistent with how they have been in years past
Well,
leading up to this season.
I I think it's a valid question. I haven't really seen too much with regards to, um, for example, local weather service offices having staffing issues. Maybe early on they did. Um, I don't know that they perhaps early on. I'm going to say that perhaps they didn't. Uh, Maybe had to cancel a few balloon launches and stuff along those lines. I'm
Mhm.
thinking right now, it's probably up to speed in terms of collecting the data. I don't know why the models are doing what they're doing. I honestly don't. Why, but I would just argue that as forecasters, it shouldn't matter what the models are doing because you should be able to look at what's going on and figure it out without them, and or at least using them, having an idea of what the overall pattern is like and what's
Right.
happening, and then using your guidance as guidance. And you should be able to look at it and say, you know what, this looks far fetched, or look at it and say, you know what, this is underdone. It's too far south, it's too far north, it's too far east, it's too far west. Um, that's what you're supposed to do as a forecaster, and I don't think there are a lot of forecasters that don't do that
Right. Yeah. They just kind of like lock in on one thing and then that's it, and then they walk away.
and go to
Yeah. No.
lunch.
Yeah. That's it.
Right?
Just like call it a day.
They do a
I mean, compared
show
to
and
how
then
it
they go
was.
to lunch.
Like,
Um,
that's it. See you next week. Meanwhile, things change, and like you look at like how Laura was. Laura was supposed to be taking, like you mentioned, that northerly track upon initiation. Like, okay, we're gonna go through Puerto Rico and then north of Hispaniola, north of Cuba, through the Straits of Florida, and then into like the northeastern Gulf, if it survived that journey. And then here we go through Puerto Rico, south of Hispaniola, south of Cuba, and now curving up. It's like, hmm, okay, let's see what you're trying to do here. And these two back-to-back systems in the same region that has a lot of people scratching their heads and being like, what's going on with these forecasts, you know, data outcomes? What are we not seeing that we're missing with these the cones coming out and the various tracks?
right. Smada Mod seems to be a welcome to the show. I see you're new to the chat board. Conversation revolving around warmer climate and hurricanes and whether it makes them stronger or less strong. Uh, there's a
Mm-hmm.
there's a couple of this is a very complex question, uh, and
Yes.
one of the issues is there's a few issues here with regards to trying to find out what the right answer is. And the thing is, for when you compare the statistical data in terms of the number of storms, when you go back and look in the 60s and 50s and 40s, if you go pre the satellite era, um, there was a time where a lot of storms slipped under the table, and you go even further back, there were probably some hurricanes out in the open waters of the Atlantic that never really got recorded, or perhaps these smaller storms that we've been able to pick up on
Mm-hmm.
might have gone undetected. They fire up, they last for a day or two, and then they're gone. Also, in terms of if you're
Yeah,
arguing,
like Kyle.
well, something like Kyle might have, well, maybe not Kyle so much, but Gonzalo earlier this season, which was a
Yeah.
very, very small system. And then there was the one last year that, I mean, we've had severe thunderstorm clusters that were bigger than what this, I think it was the B storm last year,
Yeah, I think so.
Barrel, whatever it was. Um, the other thing with regards to the warming climate, and I think this is probably a question that's better directed to a climatologist, but I would just say uh, the warming in the globe in terms of climate change has been rather uneven. The warming has actually been more significant up further north. The further north you go, up in the polar regions, as opposed to down in the in the tropics and in the major development region for tropical cyclones. Also, there's an argument to be made about whether the warming climate creates more thunderstorms, more scattered, more regular thunderstorms, which can produce wind shear in the upper atmosphere, which is hostile for tropical cyclone development and would keep intensities down. So it's a tough question to answer, because at the end of the day, most of the time conditions are not favorable for tropical cyclone development in the hurricane season. There are periods where it is, and areas of geography where it is. And you have to have a whole bunch of factors come together in order to get a tropical cyclone to form. So it's not an easy thing. We just happen to be having a season this year where everything is spinning up, including my shoes. So I mean, your ceiling fan is rotating counterclockwise, Addison. Let's name it a tropical storm. So
Might as well.
yeah, but again, my point is that your question, it's a good question. It's just it's a very, very complex answer. I don't know I don't know what the exact answer is, and I think you need to have a climatologist in the mix to kind of to get their point of view, because they're data guys, so they could tell you better than I can and better than Addison can.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna agree with you there, because while we see this stuff day in and day out, are we studying numbers and looking back for years on end, line all data up? Like, not necessarily for every case by case situation. So yeah, there's ways to go about thinking that, like, climate change has altered the way we are seeing hurricanes and tropical systems in general come around, and also the way that we are seeing just general thunderstorm development come around. They have more moisture to work with. They have more wind shear they're running into. You can have a conversation like this lasting for hours, but you're definitely finding there is higher sea levels, I think, across many spots. That could be playing a issue of concern. But I think also one thing that does not relate to the weather per se is the amount of people that are now in those areas that you do get tropical system coming through. The amount of expansion of real estate and all those beachfront properties, and people being able to go get them, put more people in harm's way, cramming more people into tighter spots, like we did see in what was it, Mexico Beach, Florida, when Michael came around. I don't think that area has still recovered from that system. It's just unfortunate, but there's a lot of parameters going into how a tropical season is felt when all is said and done, and definitely a discussion that needs to happen. If not, it's not going to happen right now, but probably will be happening for weeks and months to come.
All right. This will take this last comment from Horse Guy, who's in the Houston area, so he must be late to the live stream. So Horse Guy, welcome to my YouTube channel. And just to point out that you can actually watch Addison Green is on KHOU in Houston. Okay, so if anybody here watching from the Houston area, this is your guy. He's on your television set. Okay.
Yeah. Hey,
so really quick, just summarize really quick, Addison, for Houston. What are you thinking at the moment? And of course, an asterisk at the end, because tomorrow, as this the fluidity of the situation means that stay tuned for further developments. But go ahead.
Sure. Yep. Hey, everyone in the Houston area. Definitely don't let your guard down with regards to this system, and don't focus whenever you see any of those forecast cones, if not from here at KHOU, just in general across the metro area or the social web. Don't focus on that exact center track. Focus on the cone. See if you are in the area of concern. And if you are from this area, you know what you have to do to be prepared for dealing with tropical systems. This isn't your first rodeo. But with regards to Laura, definitely looking at potential strengthening quickly as we go forward into the next 24 to 36 hours, potentially making a landfall late Wednesday on the Texas-Louisiana border, possibly as a strong Cat 2, maybe a weak Cat 3. Are there evacuations going on? No, not at the time. There are no mandatory evacuations. There have been talks of voluntary evacuations. in places like Galveston, any of the border islands, or I should say Gulf Islands, Boulevard Peninsula. There have been talks about that. I don't know for certain if they have been saying anything has been locked and loaded, like this is what we're doing, follow the plan. But they did have press conferences earlier on today with the officials, and they will probably do so, I'm sure, tomorrow during the daytime hours. So definitely tune in. We give push notifications when we do have them saying there's a press conference. We're talking about the latest information. And if you are in an at-risk area, just be smart about it and be safe. Don't put yourself in harm's way just because this isn't the next Harvey. No, there is not going to be the next Harvey. This is Laura. Deal with Laura. Laura's not Harvey. Laura's not Rita. Laura's not anything else but Laura. Deal with Laura.
I was just going to add to that and just say that since Harvey is the one that is the signature storm that everybody's going to go to, and the deal with Harvey for Houston, of course, was the incredible rain that fell. And in this instance, this is not going to be a storm that stalls out. The upper air is different. Also, this might be if Houston is on the westernmost part of the hurricane watch at the moment. So if the forecast, most of the forecast tracks are to the east of Houston, but there are some more reliable models that are on that western part of the envelope. So if you wind up with a shift to the west, then the issue is going to be something of consequence in terms of wind and rain, and what could be maybe a Category 3 hurricane at landfall. I mean, certainly looks like there's the possibility that this could reach Category 3 status before it does so. So you have to tune into Addison tomorrow on KHOU CBS in Houston. All right.
So I'll have the latest information at noon tomorrow, and then the 4 o'clock we'll have the next full update. I'll be covering that, and as we were describing it earlier on in the newsroom, just by comparison, past storms that came this way, for Houston to be dealing with a massive storm surge potential, you would need a landfalling hurricane in the western side of Galveston, just so you get that right front quadrant to push water up throughout the bay. You get enough water up that bay, and you'll do some significant damage to the downtown area. But even Ike, when it came through, that was towards the eastern side of the bay, and there were significant swells on the eastern side, but the western side didn't really have much coming on in. So we aren't seeing a situation like that for the time being with Laura. Not looking like that's going to be a case where she just jumps drastically to the left by a couple hundred miles, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that there is some shifts slightly west, in which case maybe more of the Houston metro area is put at risk with dealing with the wind and the rain. So we'll see how time unfolds, and all eyes are on the Gulf, Joe, as Laura merges, I should say, into that area, emerges and starts to strengthen and develop.
Okay, and Paula McLennan, welcome to the channel. She must live in Houston because she's taken note of the fact that you're at KHOU. And Horse Guy, thank you for being here. I appreciate you being here on my YouTube channel. And I'm glad that you stopped in so that you too can go to watch Addison on KHOU. See, I'm giving you plugs left and right, Addison. So this way when the show is over, everybody's going to know your name, your station. All right?
Everyone goes to Joe Chaffee, the weather whisperer.
Okay. So, yes. So thanks for being here. I know your schedule is really busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time out to come on the show. I want you to know, you may not know this, but in about 45 minutes, this show should be available as a podcast. So you can share it with all your buddies who would not want to sit down and watch an hour and 20-minute show on weather, but perhaps they might be on the treadmill and they might want to listen to an hour and 20-minute show on weather. So the podcast and the Joe and Joe Weather Show is available on. Let me bring it up and let you know for sure. But you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and there were 5 other platforms that I'm on. It's amazing how many different places you have to be.
I had no idea there was that many.
Oh, my show is available on 7 platforms, Addison. 7.
Jeez.
So
you're a household name.
You can find us on Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Overcast, which is not a
No,
weather
that's the one.
site, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Apple Podcasts, actually, so 8 platforms, and Spotify. Although they're not paying me $1 million like they're paying that, was it Rogan?
Joe
Mr.
Rogan. Joe Rogan. Yeah, not yet, Jeffy. Not yet. Soon.
Yeah.
Soon. I can tell you that I can be available tomorrow if we do have a show tomorrow at the same time.
Oh, great.
I should be around Wednesday. I can't promise anything, but definitely.
All right,
tomorrow.
so why don't we do this tomorrow? Because we'll probably have some severe weather to deal with early. So why don't we? I'll send you. I'll let you know, and let's say around 7:30. So Joe and I will get all the severe weather out of the way, and then
Sure.
we can spend the rest of the show. We'll talk about Laura and what we think is going to happen. All right, so we'll see you tomorrow.
Sure, no problem.
I just want to say real. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just want to address. I just saw Robert Brown mention in the chat. Will KHOU have continuous coverage of the hurricane if it approaches Houston? If it does approach Houston and becomes a direct threat for the city, I would not be surprised if there is continuous wall-to-wall coverage. As of now, it's just standard coverage that we do have going on with more extensive coverage on our social media platforms. But I encourage you to get the KHOU 11 app, download it right to your phone, get push notifications of when we do go live, and we often will have the chance to break down the forecast in good detail. Some of my social videos have been like 20, 30 minutes, just really dissecting everything. So it's a good discussion. Join us, get the app, and be informed.
All right. I just want to say very quick, thank you very much to Robert Russo and Ruthless Goat for hitting Super Chat tonight. Joe and I really appreciate it. Addison, hopefully we'll see you tomorrow night after 7:30. Yep. And everybody, thanks for being here. Our show went a little long. I don't know if it's getting close to my record. I think my record is an hour and a half. We're at an hour and 23 minutes, and I have no desire. I'm exhausted. I had to drink 2 cups of coffee because I didn't sleep well last night. So I'm now starting to fade. All right. So have a great night. Thanks, Addison, again. So we'll see you tomorrow, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow, 7 o'clock on the Joe and Joe